Nergigante. Nergigante is the motherfucking GOAT. And if you disagree, fuck you. But let me explain why Nergigante is the GOAT. And if you're wondering why I'm doing Nergigante when it was ranked second in the popularity vote, it's because I wanted to. I'd actually like to make a series out of this where I talk about why a specific monster is great, even though it could be a monster a lot of people dislike. I tend to see a lot of good out of specific design choices in games, even if many consider it wrong. So I'm gonna try my best to convince people what makes something great. Nergigante, the Eater of Elders, the Extinction Dragon, the flagship of Monster Hunter World, introduced in 2018. Nergigante's introduction involves it appearing on Zora Magdaros because it wants to eat it. There's a size difference between the two, okay? This is passion. This is optimism. This dragon, Nergigante, knows what its goal, dream, and job in life is. This is GOAT behavior. During low rank, we are giving multiple hints about the existence of Nergigante, but we don't really see its appearance until the first Zora Magdaros siege, where Nergigante just fully griefs us and causes our siege to fail, because he's the GOAT. Proceed to the next Zora siege, it appears again, but we don't really even need to fight it. However, it's still funny. Move on to high rank. The Admiral will eventually give us a task to track down and hunt Nergigante in a new area. Elder's Recess is a really cool area, but I'm not really here to talk about that, so let's get to the point. Nergigante's intro cutscene is amazing. There's definitely a form of aura that emanates as we watch the endemic life flee from it. And seeing its silhouette appear from all the dust is just fantastic. Let's move on to the fight. Nergigante is one of the most well-designed fights in the game, and here is why. If you're a veteran player, you probably didn't have a problem with Nergigante. But for newer players, this fight was a war. Despite its moves being very well telegraphed, a lot of the after hits of some of its moves would catch people off guard, like when it slams the ground and it pushes its hand in again. Something really cool about Nergigante's fight is that it felt like a duel. Perhaps this is because it fights with its fists, right, and other limbs, instead of hitting you with some sort of breath attack. It's like you're locked in a gladiator coliseum and you're forced to fight like a beast, like a lion or something. Except you can run away in Farcaster, I guess, but you know, fuck doing that. And we can't forget its iconic attack, the dive. This attack was a killer. I think almost everyone died to this attack, veteran players included. It had a pretty simple telegraph. Nergigante would slowly stand up, let out a huge roar, then jump into the air and dive down at you. But the hitbox was kind of crazy, but it was kind of funny and kind of hype to see. Monsters starting a huge attack with a giant roar is one of the coolest and most intimidating telegraphs they can do. I'm glad that it exists as a telegraph, and this adds on to the GOAT status of Nergigante. Nergigante's moves are also really simple, yet really cool to see. It's quite nice that it stands out in the fact that like 90% of monsters use some sort of element to attack you, and Nergigante's just like fist, you know what I mean? Once you learn the fight, it's pretty simple and you almost never die to it, which seems applicable to every fight in the game, but I think this is very noticeable with Nergigante. And the reason why it is because breaking its parts will CC it a lot. I'd argue that the CC is too strong a lot of the time, but it does have a very satisfying feel to it, so it somewhat counteracts it, but I would love to see a version of the fight where you can't CC stagger it. It also has a cute sleeping animation, and this sleeping animation, which looks funny but somewhat has a menacing aura to it, like Rajang. As for its turf wars, it's kind of satisfying to see Nergigante punch a dragon in the face and slam it. You could argue that it ties with its opponents, but if you consider the fact that Nergigante is supposed to regenerate and ambush its prey, then who wins the war? In my eyes, I consider the Nergigante the winner. Now, the aesthetic of Nergigante is somewhat simple but very clean. I'm a big fan of black and edgy cool stuff, so I think Nergigante fits really well into what I personally like. But let's be real, it doesn't matter what I personally like, because it's the GOAT. One of its key design aspects is its horns. I feel like most of the time I see fan art of Nergigante in a style which is hard to recognize. I always know it's Nergigante when I see the horns. The horns give it a very devilish feeling to its design and makes it very recognizable. The black covering all of its outer scales and then the pink and orange on the inside contrast really well together. The meaning behind Nergigante's name also goes really hard. Nergal is the Mesopotamian god of death, and Gigante is giant in Spanish. The black scales that cover most of its body and the white spikes that go with it, I think kind of represent death. So that could be where the Nergal ties in with its design. As for the giant in its name, I quite like the idea that it's a wordplay of being larger than life, because Nergigante is a pretty hot-headed elder dragon, and I think you could link that to the pink and orange colours it has on its design. But let's be real, the name just goes hard. It also has toe beams, for some reason, but that kind of makes it feel like a cat. We all know what cats can be like. They're very lovable, overall a great creature. And pet, very lovable. In general, it's kind of like a hedgehog, but not. Perhaps a hedgehog, like hedge dragon. That's for its music theme. I see people tend to think that it's underwhelming compared to other monster themes, and I think you're wrong. And the reason why is because it's pretty fitting, because the theme is very hectic and imposing. Like it feels like it's being pressed down onto you, right? Which fits the fight, considering that Nergigante is brute forcing its way to beat you. It's almost like being attacked by a honey badger, but instead it's a giant, thorny, spiky dragon trying to smack you with its giant claws and horns. Also the name, even elder dragons tremble. That goes hard. We're talking about the strongest monster classification in the game, trembling, because of Nergigante. If we look at Nergigante's lore, its goal is bioenergy, which is why it pursued Zora Magdaros and Xeno'jiiva. And that's pretty cool, right? Like, its goal is two of the most important boss monsters in the story of the game. Nergigante's gear is awesome as well. I especially love its weapons. The Nergigante longsword is one of my favorite weapon designs in the game. Something about being like a spiky ass blade in a cage sheath goes really hard to me. Whilst we're here, let's discuss Arc-Tempered Nergigante and Runa Nergigante. Let's start with Arc-Tempered. Arc-Tempered Nergigante is one of, if not my favorite fights in the game, Iceborne included. This fight was an amazing send-off to base world. It was insanely fast paced, it was hard, Nerg had new moves and combos, and you got one shot by some of its attacks, which was funny. And something I especially want to talk about is Arc-Tempered Nergigante's music theme. It was a huge improvement on normal Nerg's theme. I'd argue Arc-Tempered Nerg is one of the best OSTs in the game. It meshed in the main theme, one of the main themes of World, into Nergigante's theme, and it was just beautiful. And then the name of the OST being World's End. I imagine the intention is obviously like, oh, it's the last fight of base world. But like, out of context, World's End goes really hard. Definitely a very satisfying fight to beat. Like, ugh. And then we have Runa Nergigante, which is a lot faster and smarter than normal Nergigante, with some new moves and combos, and an amazing variant for an already amazing monster. Already goated monster. Runa's role in the story involves hunting Shara Isfelder. stealing our glory at the end and then flying away with its goal achieved. This role isn't as impactful as the original Nergigante, but I think that's a given since it's not the flagship of Iceborne. But in my opinion, Rune and Nergigante had more aura than Volcana did. Perhaps that's just because it beat Shara though, and I'm biased. I think something it's very notorious for is the event quest Ode to the Destruction, which is one of the best event quests in the game, because you get good materials like the augmentation stuff, and it's easily one of the best fights for learning a new weapon. I feel like whenever I check for SOS signals, there's always multiple of this quest going, and it's for good reason. I join them quite a lot myself. This monster is such a good fight that I wish it wasn't locked behind MR100 to fight, because some people just don't do it, since they do Fatalis because that's available at MR24, and then they're done. If you're watching this and you haven't done Rune and Nerg, get MR100 and go do it right now. Something else I want to mention. I see motherfuckers comparing Nerg to Goku. That's like, I think that's pretty good. That's GOAT status in itself, right? Like, I feel like that's undeniable. Fucking Goku. You know what I mean? You know what? Okay. Let's talk about the Nergigante plushie. The plushie is peak. It does well at exaggerating the horns, and the big eyes make it look really cute. It is definitely a vibe. The statues of it are also peak, but I wish I had some money to buy them. Overall, Nergigante is the GOAT, and I hope to see it return at some point. It would be insanely hyped to see it again in Wilds. Because of its lore, I reckon you could make some crazy variants out of it, so I'd love to see Capcom do something with that. My dream fight is like a fanfic, right? Nergigante has feasted on a black dragon, and it's now OP as fuck. But I don't think that's ever gonna happen, but a man can dream. So once again, Nergigante is the GOAT. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Peace!